Helen Dodd, I first came across a few years ago now, Helen, I think. Helen, if you stick your video on. In over lockdown, she has been prolific on Twitter. Do follow her there because she's been learning about, the effects of play in lockdown. I mean, I think I remember right at the beginning of lockdown seeing a little meme that people thought was funny of some small child in Spain trying to get outside because they weren't allowed outside. Well, Helen is the author of Learning from Lockdown, How Did Children Use Play to Cope? And the author of many, many other reports, which she's going to tell us a little bit more about now. Helen, are you joining me on here?
Yes, I'm here. You're pinned, I think, which might be why you can't see me if you can't. There we go.
Got you now. And are you okay to share your lovely slides?
Yeah, I'm good to go. Thank you for that lovely introduction. So yeah, as Kath said, I'm a professor of child psychology. I'm based at the University of Exeter. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have some funding from UK Research and Innovation, which is funding a programme of work over 7 years looking at children's play in relation to their mental health. And one of the things that I've been doing over the past 18 months, which was unexpected, of course, for all of us, has been thinking about how the pandemic has affected children's mental health and leading a group of us called Play First UK, who've been really campaigning for children's need to play as part of the recovery from the pandemic. I'm not going to talk about that specifically today, but happy to take some questions on that in a little while if there's time. Instead, I just wanted to talk more broadly about why, as school staff, as school leaders, you should be thinking about play when you think about children's mental health. So as we just heard from Michael, 20% of the school day is spent outside of formal lessons. So if you stop and think about that for a minute, 20% of the school day, and some of the schools on this call probably already do spend lots of time thinking about playtimes. But when I talk at general education conferences or mental health conferences, and I say to schools, how many of you are really thinking about that time? How many of you plan for that time? And really stop and take a minute to think, do you invest in that time? Are you making the most of that time? Or is it just seen as like a break in the day, a break in the education and the bit that we're thinking about, and off they go outdoors and we kind of forget about what they're doing? And as you'll know, I'm sure there's lots of pressure on schools now to be thinking about children's mental health, and lots of schools are investing in programs which take away from school time. So they might be doing kind of mindfulness programs or CBT-based programs, which are often indoors and during lesson time. But what I think is that we can capitalize on this break time, this 20% of time, to really be, if we invest in that well, then we can support children's mental health there. And we may not necessarily then need to be doing so much of the kind of more formal addressing of children's mental health within lesson time. So free play happens when children are basically not told what to do. They're given space from adults, restrictions, and allowed to do whatever it is that they feel like doing. So they choose what they do, they choose when they start and when they stop, they choose who they play with, they choose how long they play for. And this kind of play is really beneficial for children in lots of ways. Firstly, it's enjoyable because they're choosing the thing that they want to do. So why wouldn't they choose something that they enjoy doing? And importantly, it increases their sense of control because they're choosing what they want to do. For once, an adult is not telling them, next you're doing that or now you're doing that. It's their choice. They get to do what they want to do. And it can really help children to make sense of things that are going on around them. It can help them to express themselves, because when they're given that freedom to play, they will use their play to make sense of things that are in their minds. They'll use it as a way of expressing how they're feeling about things. And when we give children a space to play freely like this, it can really support our relationships with those children, because it lets them know that we trust them. We give them space to play. We are happy to give them control. And if you're observing it and waiting maybe for that opportunity to be asked to join in, and you only join in when you're asked to join in, then it really helps set those kind of boundaries and that respect. That you're giving the child the space and it's up to them, and you're not kind of being intrusive into their play. The other thing that happens if we give children time to just play freely is that they will naturally push the edges of their comfort zone a little bit. So it facilitates this kind of adventurous play where they might start taking a few risks and trying out some different things. How high is too high? How fast is too fast? And if we kind of jump in and we stop children from doing things, then we remove those opportunities for them to work out and judge those edges of their comfort zone. And so in January this year, I published a paper together with Kate Lester from the University of Sussex, which makes a case for why children need this kind of play, this kind of edge of comfort zone play, or adventurous play, as we call it. And we think that it provides these learning opportunities which actually can help prevent anxiety in children. But if, as adults, we always step in and stop children from getting to the point where they can make that decision for themselves and can judge things for themselves, then they miss out on those learning opportunities. So what we argue in that paper is that adventurous play, that kind of edge of comfort zone play, provides a positive context where children are motivated to engage in situations where they might experience some level of fear. We're not talking about children doing things that are absolutely terrifying. Most children, and most adults for that matter, don't want to do things that are super terrifying, but we do like a little bit of that kind of adrenaline and excitement that you feel when you're kind of pushing those boundaries a little bit. And when children play in this way and we give them space to do so, it provides them with these natural exposures to things like physiological arousal, so their butterflies in their tummy or their heart racing. It gives them opportunity to learn about coping. How does it feel to cope? What helps me to cope? How can I cope? Do I know that I can cope? And it exposes them to uncertainty and feeling uncertain, judging risk, making decisions about uncertainty. And all of these exposures provide learning opportunities for children, which we think will help prevent anxiety in kids. But again, if we think about what we do normally when we supervise children playing, particularly when we're supervising children playing in schools, often what we do is we step in and we stop children before they get to the point where they're having all of these learning opportunities, because as adults we're restricting what it is they're allowed to do and not allowing them to play in a way that we would consider to be free play. So in terms of evidence, we know from children who are hospitalised, when we give them opportunity for free play whilst they're in hospital, this decreases their stress and it can lower their levels of anxiety, and it means that they have fewer negative emotions when they take part in these free play interventions. So there's nice evidence that when children are having a difficult time, giving them an opportunity for free play can be really beneficial in terms of their emotion and stress. We also know that being outdoors and being in nature are good for children's mental health. They're good for everybody's mental health, in fact. So if you're working in a school and you're supervising lunchtimes, then being outside and being in nature will also be better for your mental health. So green space use and green views are both associated with increased self-esteem, life satisfaction and happiness. Natural environments reduce physiological markers of stress. Spending time in nature, it leads to improvements in mental health and emotion regulation. And very clearly, the more time children spend outdoors, the better their mental health is. So I just wanted to share this quote. This is from a child who commented on an article on the Newsround website, and they said, "I think it's rather sad that playgrounds have shut," this was during lockdown, "because it can give me a chance to breathe." And I think that really nicely captures what play can mean to some children. Opportunity to play freely is a chance for them to breathe. And finally, just to finish up, I wanted to just highlight, often we talk about play as being, or we don't, out there in the world, people think of play as being in conflict with kind of formal education, but actually these things go hand in hand. When children play, they learn. And this is a really nice figure from the Museum of Play, which just highlights all the different learning that happens when children play. So don't think of these things as either or. Think of them as going hand in hand. If we give children opportunity to play freely, then all of these other learning opportunities come with that. So I'd just like to finish by asking you to think about what your playtimes look like right now, and what could they look like. So if we know that being outdoors is good for mental health, are children in your school outdoors as much as they could possibly be? Or as soon as it starts to drizzle, are they inside? Do they go onto the grassy area? Are they allowed to explore the trees? Are they allowed to be in nature? Or do you stop them from doing that because they might get muddy? Are they outside as much as they could possibly be? So just thinking about these very simple changes that you can make to your playtimes, which then will align with what we know about children's mental health. Are we giving them as much freedom to play as we could? Are we allowing them to explore those risks by themselves and make those decisions? Are we giving them that autonomy? And these aren't huge changes, but if you start thinking about playtimes a little bit more seriously, then you hopefully can see all the opportunities that are presented there for really supporting children as they develop in terms of their mental health. So thank you again to Oprah for inviting me to come along today. And that's the end of my presentation.